This is another episode of Standup Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Hey, and welcome to this week's show. To get things started off and kind of get a feel and excitement for this episode, here is a promo from back in about 1983. Enjoy.
The name's Jack Hammer, paramedic. My partner Bill and I work the toughest beat in town. Tuesday through Sunday nights, our ambulance is parked right here in Firehouse Alley, outside Laughs Unlimited in Old Sacramento.
The things we've seen this place do to people.
That's right. Top-name comedy acts from L.A., San Francisco, New York.
And now a full-service bar.
Hey, don't get us wrong. We got a sense of humor. We think people should have a good time.
Yeah,
but Laughs Unlimited is just too much entertainment.
Yeah, these comics are professionals, okay? New shows every week.
Yeah, easy, Bill, easy. Guess some people can't take all that humor. They start laughing, they just snap. Here we go again. Come on, Bill.
Right.
Stand back. Back. Give him room. Eyes are rolled back. Oxygen, Bill. Start an IV.
He's not coming around.
Let's get him to emergency. Move.
Right.
Out of the way. Get out. When will you people learn? I'd like to know the name of the comic who did this. Who's in there?
Find out who you're missing this week at Laughs. Call 446-5905 for details and reservations. Laughs Unlimited. Firehouse Alley, Old Sacramento.
Well, that was a promo done for the club by two very special guys who are joining me in the studio today. Emmy Award-winning Paul Robbins and Phil Cowen. Welcome. Nice to have you here.
Sound effects and everything.
No, there's quite a crowd in here.
Yeah, well, for a small room, we get a lot of people. Hey, it's so exciting to have you guys. And we've known each other 40-plus years. But we haven't seen each other in a while, so great to see you. You look good.
I was trying to think on the way over here. I don't recall the last time I saw you. I can't remember.
Well, we put it out of our minds.
wanted to forget.
It was so stinking long ago. I can't put my finger on when it was. Well, it had to be 20 years.
At least. And this is what's great about this is that, and I found in interviewing other people I haven't worked with in a long time, that once you get going, it's like you saw each other a month ago. I mean,
we look
such a
just
history.
the same. Yes, so it's not like anything's really changed.
Yeah, I kind of gone the Jay Leno way. But good to have you guys here. And this podcast, we're going to go over some of the history of Laughs Unlimited, but really in this particular case, how it ties into the symbiotic relationship we had with you guys, starting with comedy, going into radio and promos like we just heard, and we'll share. And then I have some material later on that we'll share from Paul Robbins.
Oh, man.
But let's kick it off the right way. You guys met and started working together in Santa Rosa, right?
Yeah, we were both at Santa Rosa Junior College, slightly overlapping there.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
And you were on separate debate teams, I believe.
Well, yeah, we were speech team geeks, and
we were never on the same team.
We could go into a lot of details about this, but do you want to talk about the junior college speech team?
No, I just want to set the platform because it led you to working together.
Sure enough, yeah.
And you're writers, you're performers. So how did that lead from that stage experience as speech geeks, into comedy and showing up on the doorstep of Laughs Unlimited?
You'll have to talk to him. He was the guy that broke the ice at Laughs, which is how the rest of us ended up.
Yeah, this is Paul. Phil and I ended up after college working on a Department of Education project, producing educational radio dramas. We liked working together. And so we thought something might happen there. And nods to our old buddy Paul Kinney, who was a part of we were a trio. While that was going on, I was waiting tables at the Rusty Duck, which is no more, and I was, and I decided I'll take a shot at stand-up, and so I was probably 22 when I showed up on your doorstep. You were doing open mic nights. There were not a lot of locals giving it a try.
No, we had just opened in August of 1980, and based on the video you and I saw right before we started taping this, you came to try out and started working really early.
Yeah.
Because we were still at the original club in the basement of the Delta King restaurant.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I had an advantage. There weren't a lot of local people trying stand-up, and you were desperate. And so I think there was a contest that I won, and I ended up getting a week as the opening act. And so,
yes.
The Great
I
Northern
remember that
California
now.
Comedy
Comedy
Competition.
competition.
You might have been in the first one.
I won that, baby.
Woo!
Thank you.
Yeah. Should we do more applause?
And since there was nobody else, I was able to be your opening act, a number of times, and eventually you gave me chances to move up that ladder. So I was doing some stand-up. Phil was my buddy. We had worked on this project for the State Department of Education, and then we just wanted to keep working together. And so we said, well, what can we do to make any money? Let's start doing some radio commercials. You heard a sample of it there a little bit ago. And I said, Scott, well, probably let us try our hand at team stand-up comedy, if you like. And we put together a show.
Yeah, that's when we started doing the act we called live radio theater.
So that's on my list of things to ask about because I used to love that, and I still have a strong memory of your great lines. A bear would be proud of this.
Thank you. Please tell me you don't have any of that on tape.
No. Okay. Actually, we don't have anything from live radio theater.
What a shame. But yeah, it was sketch comedy, and we live on the fly had a guy in the back of the room, a producer, if you will, playing live sound effects and music as we went along. And it was a lot of fun.
You know what? That was a really good show.
And it was very entertaining, and the audiences loved it.
And nobody was doing anything like it at the time.
No, in fact, that was kind of a precursor to the one-man shows that got more popular later in the 80s and 90s. This was, of course, a team effect, but it was somewhere between stand-up comedy and a play.
We were ahead of our time, Scott.
Exactly.
Yes, we were.
And live radio theater was a great description of what you were doing because it was story in effect, but lots of comedy and very entertaining. And then you had the sound effects, and we had a few prop bits, and it looked great.
And it was unique. The phone would ring, you'd hear it ring, and there's nothing on stage, and you'd turn your hand into a phone, and it would go, and you're talking on the phone. And so it was a unique, I've never seen anything else like it.
Still have not. And we had a really good time, and Paul was right. You let us come down and do it down there. And then, we did it at AR. I know one of our very early Sac State. We did it there more than once. Did a couple of private events that I wish we hadn't done. but that's
I didn't know about those.
That's the way private events go.
We remained fully closed.
And then, when we were on the radio after that, we were doing, what were we doing every other Tuesday night out at the Citrus Heights Club for a while?
Yeah, we did that regularly.
Yeah. It was a great bit, and it was great, good for the club because you want to get funny people, especially local funny people, and bring them back so that you get that recognition and name recognition.
You actually let us headline a few times.
Well,
Yes,
what did Paul say? Desperate? But I was new to the business too. You got to keep in mind I was.
So you didn't know any better,
right?
I guess.
Right. In August of 1980, I was like 24 years old and really doing this by the seat of my pants, and so it was really a challenge to create what ended up being the experience needed to know what to do and what not to do. And trust me, I made some mistakes. But in your guys' case, it was a great decision, and it led to a lot of things because during that. I believe that kind of led to, wasn't it K-pop, the first radio show?
Yeah, our first radio job, the station manager had seen us at Laughs Unlimited. And then it occurred to him somehow, hey, I think some of the commercials we're playing are ones these guys have done. And we're such dopes that, we were looking for a way to make a living. And it had not occurred to us, hey, wonder if we could get a job at a radio station. And this guy called us up.
Wasn't on our radar screen at all.
He called us up and said, you wanted to try doing the morning show? He offered us $1,000 a month each, and we said, yeah.
Yeah, well, talk about a kernel of luck turning into, because I alluded to it earlier, you ended up having 15 plus successful years on radio. You ended up doing a lot of TV. You won a couple Emmys. But it all started with live radio theater.
Yes, and Scott Edwards, who gave us our break.
Yes.
And I got nothing for it. But anyway. Memories, yes. But that's a great story, though, because it was something you weren't planning, as Phil said.
Yeah.
That you were having fun, making a little money from me doing the shows. Little money. But it turned into a real opportunity with K-pop. Now, the first... station was K-pop. How long were you there?
Year and a half.
Yeah, only about a year and a half. And then we were in Detroit.
Got fired.
We were only there for 6 months.
12 weeks.
Actually on the air, 12 weeks in a day. And then we were in Dallas for a year.
Got fired.
7 months on the air there, and then we hung around for about 5 months. And then we came back. Our friend Paul Kinney stayed in Dallas then, and Paul and I came back to Sacramento, worked very briefly at Channel 3 on TV Light.
Great show.
Yes.
That was a fun show.
And I do have some episodes of TV Light.
Oh,
but
great.
They show Jack Gallagher as a host and people like Jay Leno and Carvey doing sets.
Bobcat Goldthwait came down.
Jack got all kinds of people on that show.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And TV Light was kind of a radio version of what you guys end up doing as a morning show, but being tried on TV, which was really new at the time. There was a few morning shows, but they weren't as loose and music-oriented.
Yeah.
Again, ahead of our time.
It was. It was funny. It was a goofy magazine show.
That was a great show.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. Jack did a really great job as the host.
It was all Jack.
That lasted. What were we on? About 4 weeks.
Longer than that.
When you and I were on?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
No, boy, not much.
I would have said. 3 months, maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So again, a new opportunity coming from comedy, taking you in different directions.
Well, and I think one of the things we learned at that point, and it served us pretty well in the years to come, and I think is a good lesson for anybody, regardless of what business you're in. If you do everything that you can, if somebody says, "Hey, can you do that?" Say, "Yeah." Things kind of more people see you, things tend to happen, and opportunities will present themselves.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what would be good advice to anybody.
Absolutely.
You want to be available.
That's just good career advice.
Exactly.
And don't burn bridges. We came back from Dallas and landed the...
Wait, what?
We landed the job at Channel 3, and the station manager at the station that would become Y92, which was our long radio job, called us up and said, "Are you interested in doing morning radio again?" We said, "No, thank you. We're TV guys now." and
Maybe you've seen our show.
A couple of months later, they canceled the show. Hey, would you still like us to come back and do the radio show? And we went to that radio show, and then 8 weeks later, out of the clear blue, we probably shouldn't even talk about it, we got an offer to do this Fox Network show. And we left that station. And then the Fox Network show was a disaster, and we called them back and said, "Would you like us to come back?"
The Fox thing came and went so quickly they hadn't replaced us yet.
It was interesting that you say that you don't want to burn bridges, because you were able to go back and back and back, and because you never left in a bad way.
Yeah.
And that's good advice to any young person out there in the working world. You always want to
Absolutely.
leave on good terms.
Yep.
Before we get too far ahead, I want to drop back to K-pop just to bring up a short memory. When you guys were on that show, which wasn't that long, I did get a residual from that. I purchased the K-pop car.
Oh, the K-pop Cruiser.
Bright pink.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, as pink as you can think pink.
Yeah.
It was a Cutlass.
Olds Cutlass 88.
Yep.
And it was a convertible with white leather tuck and roll.
68, maybe?
Yeah. It had to be a 68.
Yeah.
And
67.
68.
Yeah.
And a beautiful old car. And you guys had it when you were at K-pop and didn't know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And I bought it on the cheap, I think.
I forgot about that, yeah.
And then I turned it into the Laughs-mobile. Mm-hmm. And that car was in every Sacramento parade, probably for the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, your St. Patrick's parade, your Christmas parade, you name it. We would sit in the back and throw candy on
That's right, because they used to do the Mardi Gras parade every year in Old Sac.
I was having a brain fart. Mardi Gras, we would throw the beads.
Yeah, that car was, I wanted a convertible, and I didn't have any money, and I persuaded my brother Glenn to buy it, and it was white and rust, and in desperate need of everything. And so we got the job at K-pop, And I started calling it the K-Pop Cruiser. And then I took some spray paint and I wrote K-Pop Cruiser down the side of the thing in spray paint. And it was such an
He tagged his own
yes,
car.
I did. Yes. And it was such an embarrassment to the radio station that they traded advertising for the paint job and the new upholstery.
Oh.
So when all is said and done, my brother came out way ahead on the deal because when I sold it to you on the cheap, it was still way more than he had invested in it. And
Yeah, and I just brought it up because I literally just sold that car.
Did you?
A few years ago. We kept it even after we sold the club because the kids loved going for rides in it. I always kept it up and running. We did a little, we had it all re-chromed at one point. We did a few things here and there, but it was just a beast.
what'd you get for it when you sold it?
Oh, $6,000?
Yeah, I would bet. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did okay.
It's a smooth looking ride.
It
man.
really was, if you don't mind pink.
Yeah, it was really
Raging
pink.
pink.
And you have to be a pretty studly man to drive around a
You gotta
bright
be
pink
secure.
car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
gotta
was
be
secure in
secure.
my manhood. So I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't know if you knew that after it became the Laughs Cruiser from the K-Pop Cruiser that we kept it up until fairly recently.
I'll tell my
And
brother.
Got many years of use out of it. And the only reason I finally sold it is Jill, was like, when are you going to get this crap out of the garage so we can put a real car in there? But it was a great bit of history for the club. In fact, I don't know if you recall, but that car was featured in the opening of not only our TV series, but also the Fox special we did. So there's still tape of that car being driven around, and it's a big part of the history of the club. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because it wouldn't have happened without you.
Aww.
So before we move on to Y92 and your great success there, let's listen to one more promo that you guys did that would be about time-wise fairly close. This promo was several years after the one we played at the beginning of this podcast. So let's listen to this. It's a little more updated, but you'll hear some more of the talent and the comedy genius and the writing of Paul and Phil. Enjoy.
Reason number 19 why you should be at Laughs Unlimited, Sacramento's only all-comedy nightclub.
Hey, did you catch Robin Williams on Carson last night?
No.
Oh, funny guy.
I
He
saw
did
him
the-
in person, though, at Laughs Unlimited.
in person.
Yeah, so whatever he did, I've probably already seen it.
Well, the night before, Pat Paulson and Jay Leno were on, and they
I've
did.
seen him, Laughs Unlimited. We had a few drinks together.
Okay, well, like last week, they had this guest host named Gary Shanley.
Oh,
and he,
Gary, yeah.
I suppose you've probably
Seen him. Yeah, down at Laughs Unlimited. Yeah. Took him to the Holiday Inn. We split a patty melt.
Yes, impress your friends and associates. Come to Laughs Unlimited in Firehouse Alley, Old Sacramento, and see the same comics in person that your friends only see on television. Laughs Unlimited, Sacramento's only all-comedy showroom. Call 446-5905 for information and reservations. That's 446-5905.
Wow, that's good stuff right there.
Well, you guys, what was great for me is I had tapped into a real creative pool with you guys and Paul Kenny that we could, I would say, hey, I need a commercial for this. And a lot of radio stations, there'd be some template that they would use or some basic thing. And with Laughs Unlimited, you guys were very creative.
Well, we obviously wanted the spots to be good, to reflect what we hoped people would expect when they went to Laughs Unlimited.
And we wanted to get paid.
Yes.
And there was that.
Yeah.
But I think the real genius of that spot is that people really got the sense that you had every big name comic in that club.
Well, that last promo was really
that was clever.
Yeah.
name dropping extraordinaire.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good job, by the way.
Thank you very much. Well, and then for years, on the radio, you would bring whoever your headliner was in.
Well, we're going to go into the Y92 years and how that really worked, not only to benefit you guys had a nice career going and ended up doing it for over 15 years, but for the club, Laughs Unlimited, what a great place to showcase because of our history and you starting in comedy at the original room as my clubs grew and changed and comedy developed through the 80s and 90s. I was going to bring up that we were able to share a lot of great entertainment. And who do you stands out as memory for you guys?
It doesn't. it doesn't do any good to impress young people, but to talk to people our age and say, yeah, there was 1 week in the 80s, I did a week with Dana Carvey at Laughs Unlimited. Well, I did a week with Gary Shandling one time. It's super cool to be able to say that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if I wanted to show off, I go, yeah, I was sitting in a jacuzzi when Dana Carvey got the call from Saturday Night Live with him.
I
and
just
his
mentioned
reaction
this morning on this silly political talk show that I do that one of the highlights of my career, we were doing our listener-thon.
Soupy sales.
Out at, that wasn't Frank Hurling, it was Mike Doherty Chevrolet at that time. And he was at the club that week. You brought Soupy Sales out. Soupy Sales hit us in the face with a pie.
Yeah. Is that I got hit as well.
One of the best things ever.
Great memory. I know a lot of the audience will go, Soupy Sales. But he was a hallmark of stand-up comedy back in the day.
Yeah.
And we brought him in his senior years. And much like Pat Paulson and a few others, it was a great opportunity to interact with the real core.
The old guard.
Where comedy came from.
Yep.
But that's great that you mentioned Soupy Sales recently.
Oh, yeah. I just was talking about it this morning, and I said to Soupy that night, I said, I can't tell you what a thrill that is, man. You hit me in the face with a pie. And he said, that's a pretty distinguished list. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., all the Rat Pack guys. And he just started ripping off this list of huge celebrities of like the 50s and 60s. He hit them all in the face with a pie. We're on the list.
There you go. And I'm sure he's mentioning that.
God rest his soul.
And somebody that I remember quite fondly, just because I liked him a lot, and he used to come on the show quite a bit. And I bring it up because I wonder, I understand he's still working, but I don't know what kind of stand-up he's doing now. What in the world is Bobby Slayton talking about when he goes on stage now?
He is still considered the bulldog of comedy.
I
he
hope
still
so.
Performs mostly in Vegas these days.
Is he still edgy?
Oh, man.
Still angry?
Still angry, still edgy.
Good.
And he's had some ups and downs in his life, and I think that has taken that edginess and that anger and upped it a little bit. He's still funny as heck.
Good.
And I saw a set from him recently and was just blown away. He's such a professional. But we had a chance to work with some of the best. I'm going to sidetrack just a little and say that because of you guys, I got to work with Huey Lewis at a couple events. And that was a real thrill for me.
Well, that was the other thing is that we always had somebody from the club at the Christmas specials every year. We did that, 9 of those? 10?
Yeah.
Something like that. Every Christmas we did the big stage show.
Might have been 12.
Yeah. Might have been.
Yeah.
And we had all kinds of comics down there. Bruce Baum, I think, did the Christmas special more than once.
And for those who may not know the names, because they were not the top tier of TV stand-up comics, but, we got to pick the people we loved to come there. And, do people know the names Milt Abel and Steve Bruner and guys like that who could not have been... It's not possible to be funnier and more lovable and charming on stage than those guys. I was
just listening to a set while I was getting ready for this. There was a somewhat famous time where Bob Worley was on Y92 with you guys, and he did his Elvis impression, the almost dead Elvis. And it's just, it was those kind of moments that made not only Laughs Unlimited more in the ear of Sacramento, but was also a benefit to Y92. Like I mentioned earlier, it was a real symbiotic relationship, and I think both grew from what started as you being an open micer.
And separate from good for our show and good for your business, I'm glad I knew Dan, what's his name? 4 Stand-Up Dads. Dan
St. Paul?
Dan St. Paul did the Christmas special. So funny. And I still get... Christmas cards from Don Friesen, right?
Don's a great guy. Just talked to him the other day.
Unbelievably funny, and they're not the names everybody knows. But if you ever get a chance to see those guys, unbelievably.
Well,
funny.
when you get a chance to listen to your own podcast, this one in the intro it says interviews of the famous and the not so famous, and I did that because
that's us.
Well, you guys have an Emmy. You've been on TV. I haven't mentioned it, but you're the Answer guys, famous on the Discovery Channel. But there's a lot of comedy that came through the club that never made it because only the 1.5% make it to stardom, and we were lucky to have those.
Yep.
Jay Leno and Carver. We've already mentioned a few. Saget, and but there was a whole strong pool of talent that people wouldn't recognize their name that were extremely funny.
Oh, there were a lot of headliners during that time that nobody would know now. I have to tell you a quick story. I don't know if you would remember. I know Paul does. We actually, and it was through the radio station, wound up getting on America's Funniest People.
Oh, I didn't know.
We ran out to the Arden Fair, filmed this silly bit doing some lawyer jokes, and we go down there and we're on the show. And, of course, Dave Coulier was the co-host, and Bruce Baum was on there doing
one season,
bits. And we end up winning this thing.
I don't think I know that.
Yeah. We split the $10,000.
We win the $10,000. One of the three finalists. Oh, look at that, we're a finalist. Oh, look at that, we won. Well, afterward,
that's amazing.
You leave that stage and you go to one across the way, and they've got it set up there with catering, and the crew's gonna eat in between tapings, and they tell everybody who was on the show, oh, come on over and you can eat with the staff. Okay, great. So we go over there. Well, we walk in the door. Here, we just won the thing. And Bruce and Dave are coming over there going, you guys, I can't believe you won this thing. And all these other people are looking at us going, oh.
Fix.
They know the host.
It did look bad.
It was embarrassing.
That's got to be a moment.
Side note, doing the radio show one time, Saget and Coulier came in together.
Right.
I think we were only supposed to have Bob, and he brought Dave with him.
Coulier, and for those who don't know, because everybody thinks of him as that was not a sitcom I particularly enjoyed, Full House. You have no idea how funny both those guys were. And Coulier, brilliant impressions, and for some reason, remember this, David Coulier decided
Tony Curtis.
He was going to do Tony Curtis and not break character, and so
the whole time
he just keeps doing Tony Curtis, and
he kept saying, Bert Convy is a wonderful dancer.
That is the line I'll never forget.
I don't know why. Why that was the line, it's beyond me, but all morning.
And, and I'm so glad that you're telling these stories because we do have a great library of history, audio and visual of the experiences, but there was so much that you couldn't capture that were just moments.
Yeah.
And things like this that you couldn't plan in a million years.
The comics backstage in the green room playing Missile Command while somebody else is out on stage. They were hilarious. Here's one of the best jokes I've ever heard, and I'm sure it was spontaneous and nobody else heard it. Backstage in the green room, and I don't know why you had this. It was as thick as two dictionaries, and it was something medical dictionary. I don't know why it was back there, but it was this medical dictionary. Bruce Baum picks it up and goes, "Oh, I love books like this. I go through and circle the mistakes." He just couldn't help but tell jokes.
Right,
yeah.
They're entertaining. Yeah. Comics are some people say it's because they're underlying insecurity, but when they're around other comics, they're on.
Yeah.
It's rare that comics can sit together and not want to compete in a friendly way and be on and try to make the other guy laugh. I mean, quick side story. I was sitting at the original room. This is got to be 1981. And it happened to be Saget and Coulier. And we're sitting at a table after the show having a drink and just BSing. And I see Dave and Bob passing something under the table. And they're not including me. So I'm feeling a little left out. And I finally go, hey, what the heck's going on? And they start laughing. And they pull up this note, and Bob Saget, who, Mr. Clean from Full House, actually had a pretty racy set, had folded up in a piece of paper some lint, and had written on there, "Here's some of my pubic hair." And we're sharing it with Dave Coulier. And they were passing it back and forth with little notes just to crack each other up. Yeah. I mean, it was strictly between them. I wasn't even included, and I'm sitting there.
And it's interesting, the people who made it on TV and you didn't know them from their stand-up days, a great example is Harry Anderson. I did a week with Harry Anderson at Laughs Unlimited. I forgot about
great
that
man.
one. And for those who don't know, he was a comic magician, right? Well, he was lovable Judge Harry on TV.
Night Court.
In the comedy clubs, he was the most insulting, acerbic he was
vicious.
He was vicious, and it was great.
Yeah, very funny vicious.
But and like you said, Saget, he was not doing Full House when he was on stage.
No, Bob used a lot of salty language. One of my favorite comic stories, getting back to Bobby Slayton, after we had done this morning show on Y92 for like 19 years, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to go do this talk show, and so we decided we were going to part ways. He was going to keep doing the FM show. I was going to go do an AM show. I did. I left him. And the morning that the Sacramento Bee publishes this big feature about we're going to be
the breakup
calling it quits soon.
Paul and Phil.
Big full page on the front of the style section.
It was a big deal.
Big photo of us. Bobby is appearing on the FM show across the hall that morning. Well, at one point, he's sitting in the lobby outside waiting to get in the building. Paul goes to walk over and get something out of the lunchroom or something. He sees Bobby sitting there and goes, "Oh, hey, what's going on? I'm going to let you in." Opens the door. Bobby holds up the paper. And I would say that I won't tell you the language Bobby used, but he holds up the picture and he goes, "It's about time you guys broke up."
All about timing, isn't it?
He was coming to town, and we did a phoner with him. He was in Tahoe. He was somewhere else, and he's Bobby Slayton, right? But he's talking not very loud.
When his daughter was in the room.
Yeah, we said, "Why are you talking like that?" He goes, "My kid is asleep over there. Was awake half the night. I basically gave him a bunch of Benadryl to make her go to sleep."
Had Natasha sleeping on the other side of the room.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, he's a funny guy, and we were really lucky to have him at the club many, many times. Now, during your Y92 years, you were very creative, and you did several things. There was bowling for breakfast, the Christmas shows you already alluded to, car phone dating. You had some real fun things that were all comedy-based. Was there anything that stood out that really made it memorable, or were all just ways to interact with your fans?
Yeah, I mean, I think you were just always kind of looking to keep it fresh and do something fun. But in a very real sense, if you're being completely mercenary about it, and I will, it was another opportunity to interact with fans. Yes,
always. And
but you did make it fun. I mean, I went to many of those events, and there was never like a boring. I've been to lots of radio promos with other stations and even your stations, but the ones that you seem to do always seem to have a little more energy, a little bit more opportunity for fun, and that's a credit to your guys' sense of humor and interaction with your fans.
And we only do 2 of those listener-thons.
We did 2 of them, yeah. It was like a telethon, but we were getting people to pledge listeners with a goal of 1 million new listeners, in an area where there weren't 1 million people. Make no mistake, the Paul and Phil show was super dumb, but we worked super hard at it.
You guys were great.
Yeah, so there was a lot of
being that dumb isn't easy. It's not as easy as it looks.
No. The cliffhanger week, the week where we pledged all week long, there was going to be a cliffhanger because it was Who Shot JR. There was all the TV
drama.
shows were doing big cliffhangers, and we said, "Oh man, we got to have a cliffhanger." We promised a big cliffhanger on Friday. Steve Stizzo used to come in and play the accordion on our show, and we had Dina, the accountant, come in and shoot him.
That's right.
At the end of the show.
And that was the cliffhanger?
The cliffhanger. We promised on Monday we'll resolve the cliffhanger. That was pretty good stuff.
See, that's creative twist of what was already going on in society, and you made it work for the show. And I'm sure nobody thinks, that heard you anyway, that it was easy. It had to be hard work, because there's a real easy way to compare, because around the same time there were some really stupid morning radio shows, the Morning Zoo, and some of these guys that just do poop jokes and have a lot of crazy sound effects, which I don't think they write or plan anything at all. I think they're just going for the moment and be high energy crazy. You guys had, I don't know if it was daily, but you had an idea of what you were doing all the time.
No, we wrote stuff in advance, and we never left on a Tuesday without knowing what we were going to do on a Wednesday. We almost never.
At least once an hour. At least once an hour we knew we would be doing something.
There was one anchor thing every hour. And the Christmas special, and I should know, we might have done 12 of them. Every year we did a live show in front of a studio, not studio audience. We ended up at the convention center. There were years when we had 1,600 people in there watching the show.
Yeah.
And that was super fun. You brought comics down, and we had name Huey Lewis and the News sang, and Richard Marx came down and sang, and those were
John Tesh.
John Tesh is
I
hilarious.
Remember that.
He is. Who would know? He was hilarious.
Very down to earth and very funny.
Yeah, I remember when we sent him across the street to go. You can take your picture with me. $5 to some charity. And he's over there taking pictures. The guys that just had his picture taken is walking away with our producer. He's going, "Hey, did you pay your $5? Yeah. Give me your $5. Come on, you took your picture."
That was a challenge with somebody in our audience. We gave them money we gave them $25 for every person they could get to pay $5 to get their picture taken with John Tesh, and Tesh was game.
Man.
He was really.
Well, before we get too far away from name dropping, I wanted to share that one of the special moments, and I still have the air check from it, for me and Bob, was Boz Scaggs came in and did Lowdown, just him and his guitar.
Yeah.
That was magical.
Were you there that morning?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I still have that in the archive.
I still have it, too.
That's one of the few things I have.
Yeah, he had a new album out, and he was out promoting it, which was uncharacteristic.
It was called Sierra.
Yeah, and he and another guy, there were two of them playing guitars, and Boz had not played his own guitar on his albums before that. And for guys our age, because the Silk Degrees album in college. Yeah. And he sat there and did some new songs, and he did Lowdown. That was really fun. I didn't know you guys were in the room that day.
Yeah, and I wouldn't leave without getting an air check of it or a tape of it. And I still have it today. And Bob and I were talking about it and pulled it out. This is a few years back, but I mean, it's still something that we still remember very fondly.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like the Soupy Sales story. We had a lot of experiences with a lot of famous people and a lot of special people. Graham Chapman worked the club literally a few weeks before he passed away.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and that was we're such Monty Python fans. That was just a moment for us. But those are moments that have all built up to a wonderful history. And I think that this podcast hopefully will share that if people stick to it and listen. So stay out there.
Well, but the price is right.
But it was, we were thankful to you guys, Paul and Phil on Y92, because we were able to not only share the club and promote the club and then interact with the events that you did, like the Christmas special, but we also, it was a huge, it ties in from promotion to marketing. And I don't know if you remember, I would tout myself as pretty good at marketing. I made a deal with the radio station that if I paid for a $10,000 billboard and put your names on it, they gave me $20,000 of airtime, and I could do it on KFBK, which normally I couldn't afford.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember the billboard with "Listen to Paul and Phil" on Y92? It was up for months, but full size, the big one,
the big paints.
Yeah,
wow, I didn't know.
So the reason I brought it up was that you take all these different aspects of guests visiting, to you guys talking about the club, to you showing up at the club, to billboards and going to all these special events. I go back to the term, it was a very symbiotic, everybody got something out of it. It was a win-win-win.
And everybody had fun.
Oh yeah.
Man. No, they were good days. One more thing about Y92, I don't know where else you're going with this, but asking about it, what do I remember? One of the best broadcasts we ever did was the show we did from Sacramento, Kentucky.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that? A lot of fun. We looked around. We found out there's 3 Sacramentos in the country.
I did not know that.
I don't know where the third one was, but there's Sacramento, Kentucky. It was like population 207.
Wow.
And we called them, and we said, we're coming, and we got set up to broadcast from there. We got... We had T-shirts for everybody in town
because you could,
and we did the show from Molly's Diner, and the whole town came out.
Well, and the T-shirts that we brought, didn't we ask listeners, hey, if you've got a business, you got a T-shirt, as long as it says Sacramento on it, right. Send it to us.
So we had Sacramento Fire Department. We were giving it to the fire department guys there, and we
just had a bunch of T-shirts that said Sacramento somewhere.
That's right. And we're interviewing these people from Kentucky that were. It was so interesting. They had a little concern, are you guys coming to town to make fun of us? And we weren't.
No.
And we went there, and they were charming, and we got their town's history, and they brought out these sisters that were 90 years old whose grandpa was the guy on the gold rush who came to Sacramento, California and didn't get rich but came back and told the town how great it was. And they changed it. It was like Green River, Kentucky, and they changed it to Sacramento.
That's a great
story.
The only thing they had going on in that town is it was the site of a Civil War reenactment.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which that's probably all. Civil War reenactments have to be dead now, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah. And that stuff only happened pretty much in the South. I mean, you don't see a lot of reenactments in California.
Yeah, but they were so fun. They were gracious, and it was just a really
I bet they love the attention.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, good job. Well, what I was going to lead to next is that Y92 did leave you to becoming the answer guys on the Discovery Channel, where you won a couple Emmys. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's not comedy based, so we don't want to share. We don't need to go into too much detail, but just tell us how that came about and what the experience was for you.
It actually began as a bit we were producing as a regular bit on TV Light that they called Answers Inc. People could send in any bizarre, no matter how trivial the question, we would come up with an answer. And after that show went off the air, and we've been doing radio for a while, we ended up doing some stuff on Evening Magazine for a while at KPIX. And
San Francisco.
Yeah. The guy who had taken that show over as the producer said to us, I like you guys on camera. I think you do a great job. I need a hook. I need a reason to have you on every week. And so then we decided to build upon the Answers Inc. feature and become the Answer Guys.
Bought a couple of blue lab coats, and people believe what you say when you wear a lab coat.
And the rest is history. It is. You can still see those on YouTube.
Can you? There's not many. There's not.
There are 2 or 3.
It was right before the dawn of YouTube. But we were doing that for Evening Magazine. It was on the national reel. And then that show ended, and the guy who hosted the show ended up hosting a show on the Discovery Channel. And Discovery said, good show, but you need something punchy at the end. And he said, I know the answer, guys. And so we did that show on the Discovery Channel for 5 years.
Yeah, and the last 2 or 3 of which we hosted because Richard left to go to work at CNET.
He'd had enough.
Yeah, and they said, we just, in the interest of continuity, you guys want to host the show?
Take off the lab coats? We did.
That's when we won the Emmys, Scott. That was the Emmy business right there.
Super fun job, though. That was really good.
Yeah.
And we were doing the radio. We were doing Y92 at that time, and then,
Two Emmys.
2 Emmys each.
Back-to-back years.
Wow. Everybody, that's 4.
It's a total of 4.
For the people from Rio Linda,
4 trophies.
That's 4 Emmys.
Yeah. Those were wild times because they would once we were hosting the show, they would book on different weekends. One of us would take Friday off from the radio show and leave on Thursday and fly to. I flew to St. Louis, and on Friday shot a thing on the technology for the fire department in St. Louis, and then a couple of miles away was Bigfoot, the monster car truck, and I got to go drive Bigfoot. And
cool.
And then they flew me to somewhere else, and you'd have this crazy busy 3-day weekend.
And then they'd edit it all together and make it look like you're together and doing everything.
Well, and when we were doing Evening Magazine, we would routinely, it's like once a week or every other week, we would finish our show, drive to San Francisco, shoot and edit 2 stories, and then drive back. And a lot of times we would just sleep on the couch outside the studio and go do the program the next morning.
So you guys are close.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of time together.
On the couch together.
We did. Actually, one of my highlights from doing that show is when I went to West Palm Beach, there was some big high-tech yacht that we were featuring and all the features on this yacht. One of the partners in the boat, and he was there having dinner that night, I met Wayne Huizenga.
Oh, that sounds familiar, but
he was the billionaire who started Blockbuster Video, and then I think he was Auto Nation.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he owned the Marlins and he owned the Dolphins for a while. Interesting guy.
You never know who you're going to meet.
Here's a synergy thing. Phil is doing a Discovery Channel story in Illinois, and he's having breakfast, and he sees at a nearby table former Vice President Dan Quayle having breakfast. And
the celebrity golf tour thing was going on.
Was in the area.
So you had Dan Marley's in there, and there's a whole bunch of athletes and other people hanging around.
But Dan Quayle stood out.
And he's watching Dan Quayle. Dan Quayle bites the corner off of his toast, puts it down, and doesn't eat any more, and leaves the table. What does Phil do?
You took the toast.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got the toast.
Come on,
He
Dan
brings
Quayle
it
ate
back.
off it.
We make a big deal about it on the radio show, and then we had it encased in a large lucite block. And then we went on a tour. We went on a tour of local malls where people would come and see the vice presidential toast.
Oh, that's
And we did
funny.
it at Arden Fair and Sunrise, and they had the little velvet rope set up and a guard, and we would show up wearing white gloves, carrying the thing, and put it on the pedestal. And anyone who came,
And I bet the crowd loved it.
anyone who came to see it got a little card that said, "I saw the toast," with a picture of it. That toast is in my office at the university.
He got it. He just got it back last year.
Wow.
A friend of ours had it. Actually, the funny thing about that story was we were sitting in the hotel that morning, me and the camera crew and the producer having breakfast, and our camera operator, Deirdre, I can't think of her last name. She looked at the cup, she goes, "Wow, that guy sitting over there really looks a lot like Dan Quayle." And I looked up for my breakfast and I went, "That's because that's Dan Quayle." "No, it isn't." I said, "Yeah, it is." I said, "I'm sure he's here golfing with the rest of these guys."
And she was going to argue with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, couldn't be.
Phil knows the vice president when he sees one.
Exactly.
That's right.
Well, we have covered a lot of different bases. Let's bring it all back home. I'm going to end the podcast with some music. By the way, Paul, you're featured. The song "The Runs."
Oh,
is
you're not
featured
going
in-
to play that.
No, I'm not
Thank
playing
you.
it on this one.
Thank you.
It's already out there.
Oh, gee.
It's called Stand-Up Comedy, the Musical.
Don't listen. Nobody needs to go listen to that.
It's,
That is-
and you're sharing space with Saget singing and Denny Johnston and Yakov Smirnoff.
Oh, man.
And a lot of people don't know these people did music. And so I put all the people that don't normally do music together into
Danny
a
Johnston
musical.
was quite talented.
Yeah, he was.
The Blackbird song.
Oh,
always
no.
is
Jimmy Stewart
special.
singing
Jimmy
Blackbird
Stewart.
is the best.
Yeah, that's the best. So that was the kernel that led to the whole episode. But anyway, I wanted to share that. But this particular episode, you're probably most famous in Northern California for singing a tribute to Sacramento to the theme of New York, New York.
You
So
really
we're going to end the show with that.
That's a mistake.
But before we do, let's bring it all back full circle. You guys got to start because you were an open micer that led to the two of you doing comedy, which ended up leading to radio. Where in this cosmos of your very successful careers would you feel Laughs Unlimited in your experiences led you, helped you get to all the success you've had?
He's really pitching for us to suck up to him at this point.
No,
wouldn't you
not
say that?
me. No, I'm sorry.
Not to him. Not to him.
I don't mean it. I'm so sorry, everybody listening. This is not about me. What I'm trying to do is bring it back to comedy and how I think professionally done stand-up comedy, clean, in your guys' case, it was always a clean entertainment, is a true entertainment value and has a purpose. There's a lot of people, especially in today's, I can't say I'm very proud of the comedy I've heard in the last decade or more. I think that it's not quite, and that's why you don't see it as much on TV and you don't see as many sitcoms from stand-up comics, because I think that the field has changed. And I think the 80s and the 90s, and I hate to use the term because it sounds old school, but it was kind of the golden age of stand-up. And you guys, at least for Laughs Unlimited, were a huge part of that. So thank you. And I wasn't trying to ask for a compliment, but I wanted to see if there was because you're both very smart guys, if there was something that you could say that comedy, maybe it goes back to your speech competitions, how that brought you to where you are today.
I will say, if it not been for doing stand-up at Laughs Unlimited, I wouldn't have gotten that first radio job, which led to the next thing, which led to the next thing. I mean, I have led a charmed life, and had it not been for doing comedy at Laughs, I have no idea what the path would have been.
Well, even aside from Laughs, but the writing that you guys did in those early days and then continue to do into radio has its basis in comedy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and especially early on in our radio career, I mean, we were scripting bits.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The
We did a
K-pop
lot-
days.
Did a
Yeah.
lot less of that
Yeah.
as we got older. But
And talking about the value of clean comedy, and I'm seldom serious about the Paul and Phil show, there was, we were together for almost 18 years doing the Paul and Phil show on Y92. And for 18 years, the station wanted to make money. Our target audience was 25 to 54-year-old females. And, hey, here's two guys that are kind of likable, and they're married, and they got kids, and they talk about them. Let's hire them. For 18 years in Sacramento, there were two guys who, it was very evident, if you listened very long, loved their wives and loved their kids. And it was a funny show, but almost never at someone else's expense. And you know what? That was a good thing. That was a good thing in the community.
Well, and I mean, yeah, I'm sure there are people who will go back. Oh no, I remember somebody whose expense was that. It may have been at people's expense, but from time to time, one of the things I was proud of is I'm trying to recall a time we ever did anything on the air that I thought some mom in the car is going to go, oh geez.
I wish the kids hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys are
because
taking...
we didn't want to do a show that our wives would have to go, oh, turn that down. I got the kids in the car. They're our kids.
Right. And you're taking pride in the quality of the effort you put out in your writing, and it all comes from that talent that you each had to bring ideas together in a humorous way and share them without offending, which very few people can do. I mean, we mentioned a couple, Milt Abel, Steve Bruner, but there's not too many. Bob Worley, I don't know, there's not a whole lot that you can get across.
Bobby Slayton.
No, he's not on the list.
But you can relate to your audience, and I think that your core experience, starting from speeches to those early days at the clubs, led you to a lot of the successes and who you guys are. And that's what I was trying to get to.
True.
I think that the core of your success as writers and as performers goes back to your standards that were set up in those early days. And that's all I was trying to do. I was trying to put a big bow on the episode.
I think you did.
Because it is such a pleasure to have you guys on the show. We have such a long history, and to be able to share with our listeners important aspects of that history and the connection with you guys comedically, but even as a successful entrepreneur from a marketing and promotion standpoint. A lot of my success through the club was through relationships like with you guys, and thank you.
No,
it means a lot.
Thank you. We had a lot of fun.
Mutually beneficial society.
We had a lot of fun, not only with the people that you would bring in to be on the show, or anytime we were down at the club, or when we worked together on the event stuff we did.
Yeah,
Soupy Sales hit me in the face with a pie, man.
I have such good memories of Last Unlimited. My 38-year-old daughter was down there at 1 year old, with us before the show.
How old's your daughter?
38.
Yeah. Well, my 36-year-old son used to ride his tricycle out on the stage while people like Jay Leno and Dana Carvey were out there. Yeah. So anyway, we're going to take this serious multi-shared appreciation moment and totally crash it with some humor by Paul Robbins.
Big mistake.
We're going into a song that you perform. I have at least 5 versions.
Dated comedy.
Laughs in the Park, live on stage, for the album, all these different versions of the song.
You were allowed to do this 5 times.
I know. I'm telling you, this is a mistake.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to Paul and Phil.
Thanks, Scott.
Keep listening to the podcast. Sit back and enjoy a little musical history, a song, a special tribute to our hometown of Sacramento. Thanks for listening. Bye.
I don't blame you for groaning there. I don't mean to give Sacramentans a hard time. This is a great town. This is a great place to live, great place to be a comedian. because in Sacramento, I'm a novelty, right? There aren't very many of us. And if you go to a big town like New York or LA or even San Francisco, everybody's a comedian. And people have said, Paul, I enjoy your show, but if you really want to compete with the big guys from the big cities, you need to close your show with a big musical finale. And think about it. It's true, Steve Martin, Frank Sinatra, Bobby Goldsboro. But if you think about it, they've all got songs they can sing about their town. And what really powerful and moving and glamorous song has been written about Sacramento? This is the state capital, right? Yeah. Huh? Hey, we got the majestic Capitol Dome downtown, the powerful American and Sacramento rivers. This is the River City, right? Yeah. Hey, we got Cal Expo, historic Old Sac, Chuck Swift Dodge. And you know, anywhere you go in this town, I don't care where you go to downtown, you look around on any street corner, and you find yourself gazing into the happy, smiling faces of sleeping winos. Start smelling the booze. I'm nearing the mall. Winos downtown are part of it. Sacto. Start watching the news on KCRA. I'm gonna meet Stan Atkinson. Sacto. I wanna wake up down on K Street with all the drunks and find I'm part of a gang, one of the punks. Get ready to cruise. I'm on 4th and T. I just might catch some strange disease in old Sacto. Till I can make it there, I'll never change my underwear. It's up to you, Sacto. We're not talking about Chico here, huh? Turlock? Woodland? What are you kidding me? Sacto. I want to wake up in a city and watch TV. See Betty Creighton and Stan, Chuck Swift selling trucks, Billy at Art and Furniture, and Tom LaBrie. These boring town blues are melting away. I'm gonna watch the pig bull start naked in old Sacto. And if I can make it there, I'll shave off all my pubic hair. It's up to you, Sacto.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.